Hello everybody, welcome to the Redmen TV and a rather impromptu live show, and I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes, half an hour or so talking about reports from last night claiming that Liverpool have rejected a bid from Saudi Pro League club Al Hilal for striker Darwin Nunez, which is a story, and quite a big one at that, I think it's fair to say. So yeah, I'm going to spend the next bit of time talking about it, what it means, what Liverpool could do, what Liverpool are looking for, what happens next, all that sort of stuff as well, and ultimately whether or not we think we should be entertaining these bids at such a crucial part and time in a season. So yeah, I'll begin with the story itself, shall I? Came from the Anfield Watch and Sam Maguire. People may know Sam from his Twitter exploits, very good at this, he is as well. But yeah, he's been ahead of the curve on a couple of stories actually recently. One from the other day, Liverpool linked with a Greek striker currently plying his trade in Nuremberg in the Bundesliga 2, and that story was sort of backed up once again yesterday by Florian Plettenberg. So Sam has done a report for the Anfield Watch claiming Liverpool striker Darwin Nunez's Liverpool career could well be coming to an end. Goes on to say, of course, he was handpicked by Jurgen Klopp in 2022 and references the fact that there has been a bid of £70 million from Al Hilal. It's claimed this is the first offer for Darwin Nunez, which is kind of leaving the door ajar for more bids to follow. References there, of course, the fact that Benfica boss, or former Benfica boss, Jorge Jesus, is currently the manager at Al Hilal. So there's a link there. He had him during his time at Benfica, of course. Then goes on to say this was a verbal offer in the region of 70 million. And Liverpool value Darwin at 85. And it then goes on to say that it's Michael Edwards who stepped in to deal with these negotiations. There's a chance the Reds could potentially shake hands and do a deal at 75 million. But there is sort of a feeling and a sense and a confidence within the club that we could actually push that price a little bit higher, more towards the 85 million that the Reds want. So yeah, what do we think? Let's dive into the chat, shall we? Let's talk about it. Good morning. Alien Ape, good morning, everyone. And he kicks it off with, Sell, he seems a nice lad and he tries, but I have zero confidence in him. Blade says, I'm happy to get rid for 45 million. Southern Scouser, we need a better number 9. I'd sell him for 50. Sharon Edwards, I agree with Sharon here, actually. I'm gutted it hasn't worked up until now, and there's still time for this to work, of course. This is just a report, a story, one that's come out, and listen, I maintain my stance. I may as well say it early. I'd be tempted to keep Darwin Nunez because anything that derails or unsettles the harmony in the squad right now and what we're trying to achieve together at this point in the season in January feels a bit off kilter and a bit sort of disruptive for no apparent reason. However, having said all of that, the finances involved could get to a point, and many may argue 70 million is already that point and then some, that Liverpool can't turn down the opportunity to sell Darwin Nunez. If it got towards 85 million, I think we're definitely in the realms of that without a shadow of a doubt. So, yeah, Mohammed, this is kind of the point, really, and this is where we'll dive into sort of what happens next and what it all looks like and what could move and all that sort of stuff later on. But I'm with you, because you'd have to seek a replacement. People mentioned Jayden Danns. I do get it. I absolutely do get it. But I'm well aware there's a centre-forward conversation coming because I have eyes and I watch Liverpool play. As brilliant as we are and as well-positioned as we are in all four competitions, because we are still fighting on all four fronts, of course, as things stand, there is still areas and room for improvement within this squad. And I think more importantly, a lot of Arne Slot's sort of ideals and ideas and the vision he probably has for his perfect made-in-a-lab football team, we haven't seen all them on the pitch yet. We've seen glimpses of it. We've probably seen moments in games that do look like that. But I think there's a hell of a lot of change still to come at the football club in a few areas in particular. And I think one of the first probably, is the centre-forward position, because I'm not sure Darwin is the ideal solution. I'm not entirely convinced that Diogo Jota is either. That's not to say that we're not going to support them to the hilt and back them every single step of the way between now and the end of the season, because we absolutely will. But again, these are conversations that I'm sure will be happening inwardly at the football club, and therefore will continue to happen outwardly as well. I want to bring up his season so far, really, and then dive into it in a bit more detail as we go along. So Darwin Nunez this season has played 26 times across all comps for us, scored 4 goals, provided 4 assists, and has picked up 6 yellow cards. And I think the yellow card point is one worth highlighting literally today, because he's suspended tonight. He can't play against Nottingham Forest, which ironically was one of his moments from last season, scoring that late winner. But when you look at the Premier League alone in isolation, 15 appearances, 2 goals, 2 assists, like those numbers just don't stack up. Let's get out there. Now, that is in a team, by the way, that's currently top of the Premier League by a little cushion too. Been scoring quite freely. Now, I know Mo Salah picks up a lot of the slack when it comes to the goal return across the front line. However, you want Darwin, who's accrued 753 minutes in that time as well. And he hasn't started all them games, Billy, you're absolutely spot on, but he's played a lot of them. And it's not as though chances haven't been forthcoming within them too. Like, he's had opportunities in those games across all comps, not just Premier League wise, to have a better goal return, I would argue, than 4 goals in 26 appearances. Like, that just doesn't stack up to me personally. And I like him a lot. And I want the overall sense of this chat to be, I want nothing more, and I would love Darwin Nunez to be a success at Liverpool and this conversation be a thing of the past, and we can just move on with him operating in a way that suits the system, suits the style. He brings all the good stuff that Arne Slot wants in and around being a centre forward, and also he gets the goals for it. However, right now, I don't think he does a lot of the other stuff that Slot wants from his centre forward, like the link-up play to a particular level. And also, he's not even getting the goals to make up for those deficiencies. So it's just a conversation. Absolutely, it has to be a conversation. It's not a perfect one to be having now in the middle of the season, which is why my stance generally on Nunez, and indeed anybody else who's a prominent member of the squad, because you can have conversations about lads on the periphery, on the fringes, do you cash in on them, do you let them go on loan? You can have them all day long. But lads who've played over 1,000 minutes of footy already this season for Liverpool, I don't think ideally you'd be having conversations about selling them mid-season. However, if the finances got to a point, and again, some would argue 70 million is well enough, but if the finances got to a point whereby Michael Edwards, Richard Hughes, etc., couldn't turn them down, that could be a world we're living in, according to this, because again, Al Hilal reportedly made their first offer, £70 million. Liverpool have rejected it. Liverpool want something more like 85. There could well be a middle ground that they compromise on and they come to a deal. And what that means for us next, we'll talk about in a minute. But I do want to take you back to when we signed him. I brought up the report from BBC. Obviously, you can see there, 64 million was the initial fee back in 2022. It then goes on to claim and say that there's a potential 85 million overall fee with add-ons. Now, a lot of those add-ons have already been met, so Liverpool will have chipped away at that overall figure along the way too. And it also says there 34 goals in 41 appearances. That's why we signed him. Coupled with that performance he put in for Benfica at Anfield, and the fact that Jurgen Klopp was just enamoured with what he saw from him, and in many ways, rightfully so. It felt like he was on a trajectory to explode and suddenly become this absolute numbers machine who had, let's be honest, and there's been glimpses of this during his time at Liverpool, had absolutely everything it took to be an out-and-out world-class centre-forward. He's quick, he's big, he's strong. He seemingly had most finishes in his locker, but for whatever reason, since arriving at Liverpool, it just hasn't clicked. And there's been moments along the way whereby you thought, okay, we've cracked it. Like, we're over that hill with Darwin now. We can move on. It's all working for him. Something's in his head has clicked. But there's been too many false dawns, really, on the way. Newcastle was the biggie. Newcastle away comes into the game, obviously, late on. Absolutely turned it on its head. 2 top draw finishes. And you think, okay, kick on from there. That's you now. Go and do that week in, week out. Be the main guy for Liverpool. The guy we paid nigh on 80 million quid for. Go and do that. Never quite managed to do it for lots of reasons. And yeah, we'll discuss them until we don't, basically. Hello. Hope everyone's well. Big Kinga says he suited Klopp's style more. Yeah, I think that's hard to disagree with. SF says, honestly, I see the risk, but I think we sell. Okay. Matt says, I think the fans will be completely divided on this. Yeah, I'm probably with you. I think it will be a sort of a divisive. He's been a divisive figure more or less since you've had the football club, hasn't he? To be fair, Darwin. But I think right now there's definitely scope for that to go one or two ways. Because again, I don't know what I don't know how we compensate for it. And the finances, if it was to be anything like 80 million or 85 that Liverpool wants, that makes it, you just can't ignore that, because let's live in a world wherein we do turn down any approaches for Darwin Nunez this January, if there is indeed money on the table to be had from the Saudi Pro League or wherever. Let's turn that down for a minute and let's fast forward to July. And he's got exactly the same goal return in exactly the same minutes, for argument's sake. 8 goals, 8 assists in, what would that be, 40-odd appearances for the season. You're unlikely to get the same levels of interest when it comes to monetary value in the summer, if that was to be the case. So do you bite the bullet and cash in now and sort of make do a little bit with the options you've got at your disposal right now, which is Jota, Diaz at centre-forward, Jadon Danns at centre-forward, a little bit Chiesa. There's red flags against all of them for me. Like, Jota and Chiesa, fitness are clearly the problems there. Diaz, we've seen impressive performances from him in centre-forwards, clearly by Leverkusen being the standout one. There's been moments too along the way, but I think, for instance, against United, he didn't really get into the game in the way you'd want him to in that particular position. So, yeah, and Jadon Danns, really like Jadon Danns, but are we honestly going to ask a 18, 19-year-old lad who's missed about 5 months of this season through injury to step up and be the replacement in the squad for a £70 million plus Uruguay international striker? Maybe. I think Jadon Danns is one hell of a prospect. I think he's got one hell of a future. But that's a big ask. That's a big ask for any football team, but one that's going for the Premier League and the Champions League, seismic. It may well happen, and he may well be the answer to all our problems, but it feels a bit far-fetched to me right now. And again, I like Jadon a hell of a lot, but I don't know. And the other element of all this as well, one we haven't really discussed yet, is Darwin Nunez himself. Like, does he want to go to Saudi Arabia? Does he feel that this is the point in his career now where he's interested in that? I mean, we've seen Jordan Henderson go over there, admittedly a different sort of moment in time in terms of what they've done and what they've achieved. However, he went over there, felt it wasn't for him for whatever reason, the Saudi Pro League, probably the competitiveness of the league itself, because he's very much the early throes of it, and returns to Europe almost immediately now at Ajax. I think, I can't speak for him, but I imagine if Darwin was in any way, shape or form considering his future at Liverpool Football Club, he would envisage his next move being somewhere else in Europe. So, yeah, there's that to consider. And we've seen a lot of, in their prime, potential, next destination European footballers go to Saudi. Of course we have. But Darwin might not be one of them, ultimately. So that's to consider as well. What I would say is, on that, is I don't think Liverpool would get or garner the same levels of interest financially from within Europe. I do think somebody earlier on in the chat mentioned sort of 40 million, and I think you would be looking at that if it was AC Milan to pluck a team in the news out of thin air, really, and use them as an example. I think you would be talking sort of more in the region of that 40 to 50 mark. I think you're only actually going to get 70 upwards from the Saudi Pro League, personally. And people are mentioning, Mr. J Mango says it here, like somebody a moment ago said, sell him for 75, Darwin. Go and get Isak. Yeah, you're not getting Isak for 75 million. Not right now. And for all the reasons we've mentioned with Darwin, but in a very different way, because Newcastle have aspirations of getting back into the top 4 this season, potentially winning the Carabao Cup. Who knows about the FA Cup as well. So they're not going to be willing to go or to allow their main prized asset and the guy who looks like he's ready to fire them to whatever their season looks like. They're not going to let him go for anything less than what they perceive to be the absolute maximum valuation right now, which I imagine would be 120 plus million pounds, because he's that good. He really, really is that good. Morning, hope you're well. Let's get into it. And Luke, this is another point as well. It was an interesting little sort of byline to all of this, the fact that Michael Edwards was handling these negotiations, and it's not in Richard Hughes' particular in tray, which is something in itself. There's a conversation piece right there. But a lot of people, including myself, when the news sort of initially broke last night, was like, that's fascinating for lots of reasons, obviously. And it was almost the fact that Liverpool were confident and bullish about being able to get in their valuation of 85 million. Now, Michael Edwards he's already revered and sort of suggested upon as being like an absolute master negotiator. and a bit of a genius when it comes to this sort of things. I would argue, and again, I like Darwin. I've backed him absolutely every single step of the way and will continue to do so until he's not wearing a Liverpool shirt anymore. However, I think if Michael Edwards can get 85 million for Darwin Nunez right now and Liverpool accept it and that's a deal that happens, he would go up in everybody's esteem tenfold once again, because his current sort of crop and his current sort of currency can't hold that much weight, not across Europe anyway. As a name and as sort of an asset, I get the Saudi stuff, but I don't see how anybody sort of who's got eyes on him regularly and watches him week in, week out would consider spending upwards of 50 million on him personally. I just don't see that being smart footballing business. But again, the Saudi Pro League is a different beast in lots of ways. So yeah. Santiago Jimenez, somebody suggesting as a possible replacement. Yeah, obviously Arne Slot knows him well, and you'd imagine Arne Slot will be so well versed on Jimenez that if he is a potential candidate, it is something Liverpool will look into. If we don't, there's probably a good reason we don't. I would suggest. Stefanos Tsimas has been suggested for Liverpool. He's not signed just yet. That is not a deal Liverpool have completed. He is currently on loan in Germany. I mentioned him earlier on. He's currently at Nuremberg. On loan from PAOK or PAOK, however you want to describe him. But yeah, that's and again, much in the way Jadon Danns doesn't feel like an obvious candidate to immediately replace the boot of Darwin Nunez. I'm not sure Simas could be either, because 19, very, very inexperienced still. Yeah, feels like a stretch to me. Yeah, it would be a bit mad. Listen, we are in the world right now. If we get 85 million from him, we have made an out-and-out profit on Darwin Nunez, which is just Isak or Liam Delap has been suggested here by him. I like Liam Delap. I think for what we're trying to do, maybe Liam Delap comes into the conversation. However, he's not guaranteed goals, is he? He's doing really, really well, and he's learning his craft superbly well at Ipswich. There's no two ways about that. But he's still very raw. There's still a lot to improve there. And again, you could argue the same applies for Darwin Nunez, of course. But I'm not sure if we are looking for a plug-and-play type centre-forward. I'm not sure Darwin Nunez is that in particular. Just on Darwin's overall career for Liverpool, it's interesting how, if you look at what he did at Benfica, 85 appearances, 48 goals, 16 assists. And then Liverpool, 122 appearances, 37 goals and 21 assists. So that's better than 1 in 2 in Portugal, which admittedly the Premier League isn't the Premier League. I'm fully aware of that. However, that conversion rate in terms of goals per game has gone down to, what's that? 1 in 4-ish for Liverpool, which maybe just slightly less than 4. Yeah, he's almost doubled the amount of games just to play to score a goal since arriving there. And there's been a lot of frustration with it too. It's not just been like, yeah, but look at what he offers the team. Look at what he does in the round it. Often there's been question marks about his all-round game, as well as the fact he doesn't score enough goals, and that doesn't stack up either. So, difficult. Blade67 says, use Dan as the fourth choice striker. The answer is in-house. Well, there's been reports this morning from James Pearce that Liverpool could look to consider loan options for Jadon Danns, which I spoke yesterday about this on the pod in quite a lot of detail. I wouldn't be against Jadon going and getting some more experience. But, however, having said that, if Darwin Nunez does leave the club, we absolutely need to find some form of replacement somewhere. I would have cards on the table. I would have major concerns about us allowing anybody within the first team options to leave right now. I think within sort of like the opening 18, 19 players, I don't think you do much there. And you don't really want to unsettle that particular boat, because I think there's lads away from those numbers that you can afford. Tyler Morton, for example, James McConnell, Jadon Danns potentially in another life, depending on what happens here. I think you could do something with them because they don't necessarily have a direct, tangible impact on the minutes. But with Darwin, again, he's over 1,000 minutes worth of footy already this season. Is that something you really want to allow to walk away? And are we absolutely certain, Jadon Danns can pick up the slack there? Can Diogo Jota stay fit for the rest of the season? Is Federico Chiesa now an option, a viable option for us for the rest of the season? If all the answers to those questions are yes, then you are maybe more comfortable with allowing Darwin Nunez to leave this window. If they're no, or if there's question marks around them, I'm not sure you can do it. And I'm not sitting there saying Darwin Nunez is the long-term solution. Long-term, there's always a conversation around him. I actually felt in the medium term was going to be when it happened, i.e. the summer. Turns out it might just be the short term. And if the money, come back to it, if the money's on the table and the money is right, Liverpool may not be able to turn it down. Whether Darwin Nunez can turn it down or not is a different story entirely. Because, I'm not sure he will be particularly enamoured or open to a move to Saudi Pro League right now. I think he would have had his sights set on whatever the next step in his career was, being somewhere in and around Europe still, Italy, La Liga, back to La Liga, Portugal, back to Portugal, even a Bundesliga move, something like that. I'm not sure he'll be in love with the fact he might be off to Saudi, personally. And not because, just because of the league and the fact that, again, it hasn't been sort of a rip-roaring success that maybe they'd hoped when they started splashing out all the cash that they did on it. Nobody's really paid much attention to it as a project and as an entity. I think there was sort of suggestions that maybe there would be more eyes on it and we'd start seeing it on telly, basically. As far as I'm aware, that hasn't happened. Certainly not in my life. So people might be different. But yeah. Davey says we need a Zubimendi style DM in this window. That if Liverpool are to do business, somebody a moment ago asked me if we do think we will do any business in this window. I'd like us to. Let me say it like that. I would absolutely like us to. And that business is incoming, not outgoings, for what it's worth. In an ideal world, I would have held this conversation around Darwin Nunez till the summer at the very earliest, to be honest. In an ideal world, he just started scoring goals and being a viable centre-forward option for on a slot forwards, but whatever. I would sign one or two this window, personally. Probably one, I would suggest. I think the priority would be a DM, as you referenced there. I think I'd let Tyler Morton leave the football club on loan or permanent, whatever the best option was for him and for the clubs involved, of course, and all the parties. And I would go and sign somebody who is in the mould, stylistically, of Ryan Gravenberch and Zubimendi, because I just worry that Tyler Wendo's been superb, but he's been superb as a centre-back a lot recently. I just fear that we're asking a hell of a lot of Gravenberch in terms of the minutes that he's got under his belt already. Post not really playing at all for Bayern Munich, not playing a great role for them, and then last season being a bit part player, being a bit in and out for us. I think to go from those 2 seasons to suddenly being an absolute vital, pivotal cog and a mainstay is a big old jump in terms of the work and in terms of the responsibility that it's putting on his body. So, I would like to see us do a bit of business. And it would be a 6 type. I actually don't think Zubimendi is the answer, to be honest, because I feel like Zubimendi would demand instant sort of first choice and superiority, and I'm not sure he would warrant that given how exceptional Ryan Gravenberch has been this season. So I think somebody to come in and be an understudy and again a backup to Gravenberch would be the solution. What that looks like, we can debate amongst ourselves. In an ideal world, is probably Carlos Baleba at Brighton, to be honest, but how possible is that is the question. So let's start to wrap up on Darwin Nunez, shall we? I want some hard and fast, what would you do? Let's say Al Hilal return with a bin. Somebody a moment ago mentioned Jorge Jesus, the manager. I dug up some quotes actually from him before I do that question. And he spoke glowingly about Darwin Nunez a few years ago, as you might well imagine, because obviously, as I say, he was his manager at Benfica. He said, all his decision-making ability, finishing and speed, he still needs to improve and he will learn. He was Benfica's most expensive purchase, and when there is no pandemic, he will be the most expensive sale. Got that one right. He will be a world-class player. Unfortunately for me, maybe I will lose him in a short time. Well, Jorge, a lot of what you said there has come to fruition. Possibly there might be a reunion on the cards as well if Al Hilal do return with what is deemed an acceptable amount for Liverpool Football Club. A lot of you, and I mean a lot of you, are saying cash in now. This may well be the only window opportunity you get. And I do get it. Jamie Hughes says he would have sold for 70. What do we think? Are we at all concerned that we are cutting our nose off to spite our face a little bit with this? Because I guess a lot of it boils down to, listen, Liverpool have been a sell to buy model around the club for a long time now. So what I'm about to say is actually nonsense a little bit, because how important are the finances in all of this is where I'm going. Because I would love nothing more than Liverpool to say, we can't sell him now because there's no chance of getting a replacement through the door whatsoever. Similar to what we did with Salah, because there was crazy money coming in for Salah 18 months ago, whatever it was, from Saudi Arabia, from the Saudi Pro League. And we said, there's not a chance we're even considering that as a possibility, because our window has got like a day to run and then no days to run almost immediately after. So we can't sell him because there's no chance for us to do anything in the market to actually potentially replace him. So if Liverpool had a similar sort of stance and said with Darwin, we appreciate this 70-odd million on the table, but we can't do anything in this particular window that possibly goes some way to making up for that loss in terms of the minutes, in terms of the output, whatever. But we'd be happy to potentially win the Premier League, potentially win the Champions League, do whatever else domestically. And then in the summer, we will consider bids in and around the 50 mark, for argument's sake. Because I just fear that losing out on that 20-odd million might be the tipping point for Liverpool and might be enough money for us to go, we can't miss out on 20 million because of the way we're run. I'd be happy with the first option personally, because the finances don't really mean a lot to me, apart from the fact I know how we do run and how we do operate. And it may well be that whatever we do accrue on Darwin could be massively, massively important for what we can do further down the line as well. So, stuff, really tough. Dylan says it's not hard to replace 6 goals and assists in 20 games. Somebody a moment ago asked me what I would sort of deem a successful, or maybe not successful, maybe a passable season for Darwin in terms of this campaign. So he's got 2 goals, and I think it was just Prem related as well. So 2 goals, 2 assists in the Premier League thus far from 15 appearances and 753 minutes, as mentioned earlier on. He would have to, if he played 15 more games between now and the end of the season, let's mirror it. Let's do it like that. He'd have to get to 15 more games. He'd have to get 10 goals, I think, in those personally, and probably a handful more assists. So let's say he ends with 12 goals and 7 assists. I think that would be a decent return, considering where we're at right now. You'd want more. You'd want 15 upwards goals, and you'd want probably 10 upwards assists, because if your main striker, who costs £70 million, by the way, isn't getting 20 goals a season in the Premier League, they've got to offset that with some assist numbers. So you can't go, for example, 15 and 2, because that doesn't stack up combined. But you can sort of go, possibly, you can go 12 and 7 or 8, something like that, to get to your 20. You know what I mean? Like, Salah's putting up 20 before Christmas most seasons. And I know he's an absolute freak of nature. He's a completely separate conversation to all of this, really. But you do need more, is kind of the central point on this from Darwin. And right now, we're not getting it. And I said it earlier, not only are you not getting it in terms of the goal return and the tangible output with goals, assists, etc., you're not even getting what I think Arne Slot wants from his all-round game. So you're in a real hard place when it comes to Darwin Nunez. And it's not his first season either. If it's his first season, you could say, oh, he's learning, new league, he'll adapt, transition, new manager, a lot of change around him, we'll be fine. We're 2.5 years into the project now with Darwin Nunez, and the end result isn't really any closer, I don't think. I think there are certain aspects of games that have improved, but the same frustrations still carry on, and they still frustrate week in, week out. So yeah, I'm not sure. Let's quickly wrap up. I'll dive back into the chat to see what we're saying. This is the most opportunistic sale. Yeah, I made this point earlier on. There's 3 elements to all of this. There's 3 different aspects that have to all align to make this deal happen. Liverpool have got to be willing to sell. The buying club have got to be willing to put up the right money. And Darwin Nunez have got to be willing to make the move. That last one could be the stumbling block, ultimately. And again, I made the point earlier, I'm not sure if Liverpool do want the £85 million has been suggested, I don't think we're getting that from Europe right now. I really don't. So, yeah. A lot of people mentioned Lautaro Martinez in the chat. I don't know, man. I don't know about that. I'm not sure. David John, I think Darwin is going to be a victim of not fitting what slot requires from a player. Unfortunately, I think Harvey might be in this. Yeah, I agree with you on Harvey. Actually, I do. I agree with you on Harvey. A victim of the system, possibly. I do think there is a profile conversation on what our centre forward looks like, and I don't think it is Darwin. I would argue it's potentially not Diogo Jota either. So I do think there's something in that, definitely. But again, I said this right at the top, like, if he isn't the perfect solution in terms of what the system and what the tactics require from him, it's fine, because he's bought for a different manager. A different manager literally cherry-picked him and said, you'll do for me. Okay, you can discuss the rights and the wrongs of that, whatever, but that's not where we're at right now. We've got a new manager, a new style, a new tempo, a new everything, really. But what Darwin Nunez isn't doing is he isn't making up for those shortcomings when it comes to what he can offer the team by sticking the ball in the back of the net. And again, he's had ample, maybe a stretch, but he's had decent opportunities most times he's been on the pitch to score, and he's been a bit unfortunate once or twice. Goalies have made good saves against him, of course they have, but I would argue his numbers should look better than 2 goals and 2 assists in the Premier League right now. That's just where I'm at, and underwhelming is a word that's probably perfectly apt in this situation, to be honest. So yeah, I'll start to wrap up now. I agree with this. But somebody a second ago asked me what I would do this window and who it would be. Carlos Baleba, I'd probably be all over it, to be honest with you, from Brighton. I think if there was any chance you could do that deal, I would absolutely do it. I'd keep the rest of the squad, by the way, in situ, regardless of this conversation we've had about Darwin. I wouldn't touch the squad, because I don't want to rock anything that we're particularly trying to do right now. But I would do a left back. Although I think the left back can wait. I don't think the DM can wait until the summer. I think the left back could. I think you can absolutely get by with Kostas Tsimikas and Andy Robertson, 2 senior left backs who both vying for the first choice slot. I think that's absolutely sound. But yeah, I think Carlos Baleba as a DM would be my choice. And I think the summer left back one would probably be Kirkez, if he hasn't already gone somewhere else before we get round to it. Liverpool could act on that, by the way. We know Liverpool have a tendency to do something in the market if it's suggested or it's deemed that one of our rivals are going to get ahead of us on it. That tends to be when we do most of our business in January, to be honest. If we've identified a target for further down the line and somebody swoops in, that tends to be when we actually get off our seat and do a little bit of business. So let's wait and see on that. Yeah, sound. Interesting stuff. Listen, ultimately, whatever happens, it's sound. Liverpool are boss, and hopefully we continue to be exactly that tonight. But I'm fascinated by all this, I must admit. I think I honestly expected to be having these conversations. They haven't come as a great shock to me. The timing is what's come as a shock to me. I was fully prepared to see out the rest of the season and then in the summer have some big old chats about what Liverpool do in the market, what Liverpool's makeup of the squad looks like. That was the world I was living in. I did not think I'd be doing it on the 14th of January. But here we go. Life comes at you, doesn't it? Life comes at you. Yeah. Let us know in the comments what you do with Darwin. The ship's cat. Keep Darwin until the summer, then offload him. What forward would I sign? Ooh, listen, if Isak was a possibility, give me Isak all day. Jonathan David's not a bad shout. You get him for nothing. I don't hate it. I have my reservations when it comes to Jonathan David in terms of the step up, in terms of the quality required. Gyökeres, possibly. Who would be my choice? It's Isak is the answer to this question, actually, because I think he's just the all round perfect package, what we need. The only minor red flag next to Isak's name is his injury record isn't ideal, but outside of that, I think he would be the absolute ideal solution. So yeah, wonderful. I'll wrap up then. Thanks for getting involved in this. Again, impromptu Darwin Nunez chat. Yeah, let's wait and see what happens. There's still over 2 weeks left in the window, so lots of twists and turns to happen, not just when it comes to Darwin Nunez, potentially when it comes to the Football Club full stop, some loan exits, some potential permanent exits, hopefully some potential permanent incomings as well. So stay tuned to Redmen TV. We will keep you abreast of absolutely everything when we can. And, of course, don't forget Liverpool play tonight, more importantly than anything else. Nottingham Forest away, massive game I'll be back in studio tonight with Steve and Paul for Watch Along Duty. So do join us then. Until then, up the Reds. Have a boss day. See you in a bit.